Welcome to episode not quite 3, not quite 4 of our Monster Hunter Slang series. I don't personally know how much more than 3 and how much less than 4, so we're gonna call this episode 3 Ultimate. And this will be our first corrections episode. In the last few videos, I've made quite a few mistakes, including in the arkveld one. Actually, scratch that. Especially the arkveld one. But while my arkveld mistakes are a series of getting chain whipped by Ark's tentacle hitboxes, the other mistakes are factual errors I've made while explaining vocab. So let's go through some mistakes as well as cover some fun add-ons that you folks added in the comments, starting with subscribing. Subscribing is when I move out of the kitchen because somebody complained about all the stuff I had on the counter back there. Clagger. Oh man, I knew this one was gonna come to bite me. Yes, Clagger is technically the name of the monster's animation and not the doing of the clutch action. A Clagger is after all 50% stagger, which has existed before the clutch claw, even back in base game and before. And the only action you gotta do for staggering is kicking the living Jesus out of it. While you do hear people refer to the actual clutch grapple while a monster is claggered as claggering the monster, technically the correct term is getting the Clagger, or as you'll sometimes hear, get it. Supernova. Now, some of you may remember because it's not that long ago, but in the last episode we talked about supernovas and how the original one was Teostra's supernova, and I spent a small lifetime trying to figure out whether the term supernova was a Capcom official term given to Teostra's ult, or the community nickname for it that Capcom kinda just made official. And pretty much where my search ended was that Capcom called it the Supernova in the Monster Hunter 4 guidebook, which lives somewhere off in Japan, written in Japanese, that I'm never gonna get. But plot twist, I went and bought it. And I'm just gonna say right now, this thing is considerably bigger than I was expecting. It's got everything. It's got like hit zone values and stuff. But for the answer you're all been waiting for, you can see right here under Teo Tescotora, which I believe is the Japanese name for Teostra, you can see that his ult is called the Supernova, which is confirmation enough for me that this is probably Capcom's official original name for it. Now, one thing to note is that the game did come out in September 2013, and I think this guidebook came out early 2014. It is technically possible that it is a community nickname that Capcom just was quick about picking up and put it into this guidebook. But either way, I think that's about as deep as we're gonna have to go to it. Also, if you guys have any other 4 guide questions you want answered, feel free to ask. I've got the book. That tells me everything. Zoomies. While I previously referred to Rathian's walk aggressively 3 times attack as Zoomies, that is apparently the most recent choice term that chronically online Reddit people like to call it. The people who also probably say things like goodest boy and whimdy. While I don't say those last 2 things, I have seen Reddit before, which is probably how I got infected. Now, I believe this move has been in the game for, well, as long as the game has been in the game, so it's had its fair share of nicknames in that time. Let's just speed run through all of them. Chicken Run. Chicken Walk.
The Fitness Gram Pacer test. 1, 2, 3.
The One Frame. The Lawnmower. And last but not least, from the poets of the Monster Hunter community, we have the Rathian, the Wrath Thing, and the Wrath Special. Yes, when Rathian Rathians you, getting Rathianed is probably the most accurate way to describe it. As irritating as this move is, I think Capcom has decided that it wouldn't be Rathian without it. So I guess it's just gonna be here, till the end of time. Sets versus builds. As a modern-day video game player, I usually use the term builds for any equipment set concoctions in any game. I think this has become kind of like an umbrella term for a lot of games like MMO builds, roguelike builds, even deck builds in card games. However, in Monster Hunter, the original term is sets, because armors, kinda like tennis games, come in sets. Hunters would craft an entire monster's armor, and before the term build was such a widely used gaming term, they would call it a set, getting a different set of skills for them, or set bonuses, which we still have today. Now, they're not called sets anymore. They're still called sets both in-game and by the community. It's just that with deco, skills, and modern gaming lingo, people also say builds. If you mix and match different sets together, that would be a mixed set. And if they look stupid enough, or just didn't make build sense, they were called clown suits or clown sets, which is the premise of ProZD's ass-kicking outfit sketch.
What the hell are you wearing?
It's my ass-kicking outfit.
Now you would think with the introduction of layered armor that you would see less stupid clown outfits, but to no one's surprise, I think you see even more. The desire sensor. In a previous episode, we talked about the desire sensor, and I mentioned that it's a pretty widespread gaming term in the modern era of gaming. However, someone pointed out that the origin of the term was actually from Monster Hunter. Now, I did try to look up to see how old of a reference this goes back to, and the oldest thing I could find online is a Monster Hunter Try Guide from 2010 that mentions it, which is pretty old. However, in that guide, he says it's used by online gaming communities, and I don't know if he means Monster Hunter online gaming communities or just your average internet cafe resident of the early 2000s. Now, while I can't tell you exactly when the term came to fruition, I can say that it's much older than Try, as even in this guide, they say it's already been a running gag for a while. Now, the guide also seems to mention that it's just a joke and is untrue, so maybe they have no idea what they're talking about. And two more things about the desire sensor that you guys remember to add on: it doesn't discriminate based on material rarity, and can leave you hanging on like Rathian level 1 scales for 6 hunts. And then, when it does eventually reward you, it'll give you far more than you need. Both of those things are true. Sieges. Sieges are new, but they also aren't new. 16-player lobby with shared HP and nuclear reactor disintegration beam, yeah, that's new. But multiplayer HP or online Big Dragon defend the garrison mission, no, that's not new. As Monster Hunter has had that as far back as Lao Shan Lung, which is, let's be honest, more of a siege than the newer sieges, just by definition. I'm actually not sure when they started calling them sieges. However, it's the most similar to the Zora Magdaros quests in Gen 5, which makes sense because they're supposedly related. When Lao Shan Lung's uncle got divorced and remarried a volcano or something, who knows? How old is this fight? Here's a guide from 2005 by Orlean Knight talking about it, with great lines like, "Lao Shan Lung is a fat man going for the fridge." See, I wasn't kidding when I said the Monster Hunter community has some poets. Hope you're still playing Monster Hunter today, pal. Hyperspace Tackle. Turns out that the Monster Hunter story's name for the hip check didn't randomly appear out of nowhere, which is ironic because the hip check hitbox does. Apparently, hunters have been calling it this, don't ask me to read that, which translates to Hyperspace Tackle or Warp Impact depending on who you ask, both of which being accurate descriptions for this thing. In addition to GOG and Supernova being put into games, this is yet another example of the Monster Hunter team having listened to their fans for quite a long time now, and hopefully that won't change anytime soon. Nth Fleet. The term Nth Fleet is specifically a 5th gen term, since Gen 5 describes all the older gens of the game as having been sent out as different fleets. Prior to this, they were just called gens, or generations. However, despite it only being introduced recently, there's a pretty good chance that at least some version stays. Now that Capcom wants Monster Hunter to go mainstream, I think they want a canon way for hunters to decide what gen they started in. They seem to have made a 6th gen banner, and now that players already have a way to identify the generation, and even named podcasts after it, it seems counterproductive to just take it out completely. Then again, just like the rest of this episode, I might be totally wrong. Bazelgeuse. Yes, he's pronounced
Bazelgeuse! Bazelgeuse!
Man, I swear to God, Monster Hunter Stories is like the dictionary for what things are called in the game. I will say that not knowing how to pronounce
Bazelgeuse!
is like a running joke at this point, and people have called him everything from B-52 to Bazelgeuse to I fired a dung pod. But in all honesty, it doesn't matter what you call him, none of us are going to hear you over the sound of his music. And that's it for this episode. On the next one, we'll go back to actual new terms. If you have any more terms for me to cover, leave them in the comments, and if you have any more additions and or corrections, leave those too. Just a warning for anyone that's still here, you're gonna get some hunting horn videos at some point in the near future, so don't be surprised when those happen. Anyway, thanks for watching. Good lord, I love playing Wild's Horn, one of the greatest things they ever made. See y'all next time.